The image makers, the designer-photographer partnerships that change the world. The way in which a fashion label presents itself to the world can be just as important as the garments it makes. Before a customer gets anywhere near the clothes, chances are they'll have some impression of the brand's broader image. That means a designer's work must be backed up with a strong and distinctive advertising campaign to generate a dedicated audience. However, creating a unique and original image which projects wide appeal and an underlying aura of exclusivity is far from an easy task. And this is when the world's top-tier fashion photographers rise above the rest. By capturing the spirit of a brand along with a designer's vision, they present the clothing in a way that's both inspiring, enticing, and recognizable over a prolonged period of time. Let's look at some of fashion's most successful collaborations between design houses and world's high-end photographers, exploring how the magic touch of the top-tier fashion photographers can turn a little-known atelier into an instantly recognizable icon. Examining the influential brands and the photographers that became synonymous with them. The following is a breakdown of how creative execution can develop into a world-famous signature brand image over time. In the third installment of The Image Makers, we explore a collaborative partnership which is truly unique. It is between revered fashion photographer Nick Knight and the legendary designer Alexander McQueen, exemplifying the brilliant results that can be achieved when two creative geniuses join forces. Nick Knight refers to himself as an image maker, but within the fashion industry, the 56-year-old is regarded as one of the most influential photographers of this century. Knight's beginnings. Born Nicholas David Gordon in London in 1958, he followed artistic leanings from an early age. He studied at Bournemouth and Poole College of Art and Design. Around this time, his first photography book, Skinheads, hit the shelves in 1982. Before completing his studies, his rise to one of the world's most sought-after photographers had already started. His notoriety led to a commission by ID magazine's editor, Terry Jones, for its 5th anniversary issue. During this time, he also worked with Japanese designer Yohji Yamamoto, shooting his 1986 catalogue under the art director Mark Ascoli. From there, he went on to create successive catalogues for the designer, before scoring a position as the commissioning picture editor for ID. Knight has developed a worldwide reputation as an avant-garde digital artist and fashion photographer. His work continually pushes the boundaries of societal expectations, resulting in electrifying and captivating images. They leave an indelible mark in one's mind, the result of 3 decades of tireless work. His impressive portfolio of images conveys a deeper subtext behind their subliminal advertising. Boundless imagination. Knight's desire to experiment with cutting-edge technologies is the reason behind the launch of his fashion website, showstudio.com. Its debut in 2000 aimed to show the entire creative process, from conception to completion.
Magazines are not the best place to see fashion anymore. Fashion is best seen on the internet, and therefore you have a different medium for that. So it really is just finding something that suits the medium it's distributed by. I think what the internet has done is allowed us to directly have a contact with our audience. So now a piece of work stands on its merits. Magazines and perfume companies and fashion companies would be completely open about being racist. And in the end, I didn't feel I could just put up with that. I didn't feel I could just create all my work for all of my life in those circumstances. So I wanted to start something which I felt was a little bit more in line with what I felt about life. And I wanted a platform that I could say and do the things I want to do.
His ability to work outside recognizable paradigms is the reason that Alexander McQueen sought him out to discuss collaboration. Nick Knight, in turn, saw a reciprocal imagination in the designer that knew no boundaries. He later tells Huffington Post, McQueen wanted to do things differently from everybody else, to do things that felt much more exciting to work on, more experimental and more dangerous. Alexander McQueen. Throughout his tragically short life, some of Alexander McQueen's nicknames include l'enfant terrible and the hooligan of English fashion. Due to his working-class origins and rebellious nature, he put controversial, eyebrow-raising shows on the map, often causing outrage, forcing people to reflect on their own ethical choices. Undeterred, McQueen continued with his show-stopping runway shows and mesmerizing designs. This garnered the love and adulation of fashion worshippers the world over. His designs exhibit attention to detail and costume-like beauty seldom seen. And as a result, rock stars David Bowie, A-list celebrities Sarah Jessica Parker, and socialites Plum Sykes lined up for custom fittings. Even among the critics, he was noted for his exceptional talent, innovation, and unquestionably among the best in his craft. McQueen's beginnings. He was born Lee Alexander McQueen on March 17, 1969, the youngest of 6 kids. His father was a taxi driver, his mother a teacher. Throughout interviews, he often speaks of being the pink sheep in the family. It's a reference to him being a misfit, but not a reject. At 18 years old, he told his family that he was gay. By that time, he describes having known for at least 10 years. After a rocky period, his family accepted his sexuality. His close relationship with his mother and protective love for his sisters influenced a lot of his work. His designs became a form of empowerment for women, referring to them as a layer of armor that could be used against the cruelties of the modern world. Eponymous and infamous. McQueen graduated with an MA from Central St. Martin's College in 1992. His controversial graduate collection, Jack the Ripper, was bought in full by the fashion editor Isabella Blow, who became his muse, mentor, and influential supporter throughout life. She reportedly told him to go by the name Alexander in the fashion industry, rather than his given name, Lee.
I discovered Alexander when he was at college, and I couldn't actually get a seat for his show, but I bought every piece in his collection. And I followed him since he began, since he was a little boy on the dole. And I've given him a standing ovation since he started with his mother. Always 2 people in the audience that stand, his mother and myself. So we stick together, and I'm very excited about Alexander. I always go at midnight and hug him and kiss him and just have a quick look through the collection. I just knew that he had something really special, very modern. It was about sabotage and tradition, which is the perfect combination, and beauty, violence, all the things that I suppose the 90s represent.
McQueen's starting career as a tailor begins soon after his studies are over, paving the way towards the launch of his eponymous line in 1992. He staged lavish shows during London Fashion Week, and his name rapidly became infamous, most notably for his extremely low slung. He was the first to implement technology into fashion shows, and his rebellion against the industry's traditional aesthetic is always visible. Non-traditional beauty. Before inclusivity became a fashionable term, McQueen had already embraced it, using models that broke every stereotype. And he often used models that did not fit the traditional aesthetic beauty standards, including mentor and muse Isabella Blow. His exemplary work gained him recognition, and in 1996, he was appointed as the creative director for Givenchy, where he worked until 2001. He was not initially well received, with certain members of the press referring to him as the hooligan of English fashion. Despite this bias, his designs and runway shows during those years set the fashion world ablaze.
I really do rely on my honesty, and in fashion it doesn't go down too well because people want to hear how good they are and how nice their magazine is. I don't think that's modern for the 21st century. I don't think it's the way fashion's going to survive in the 21st century.
While working for Givenchy, McQueen moonlit with his own label, staging elaborate catwalk shows in London. His Spring-Summer '99 collection resulted in one of the most iconic images in fashion: Shalom Harlow in a white dress with spurts of paint spraying her as the runway rotated beneath her. In December 2000, McQueen granted Gucci Group access to the arch-rivals of LVMH to buy a 51% stake in the Alexander McQueen name. This marked the end of his tenure at Givenchy. McQueen, for his part, claimed that working with Givenchy restrained him creatively. He welcomed a renewed focus on his own label in 2001. His partnership with Gucci helped him to expand to fashion capitals around the world, making him an international brand. By the end of 2007, he was one of the most notable names in fashion and a favourite among celebrities and worshippers of high fashion. The creative partnership between Nick Knight and Alexander McQueen. Both Knight and McQueen share the label of visionary, taking a similar approach to their work. Knight was drawn to McQueen's designs from the first time he saw them. In an interview with the Huffington Post, Knight reflects, "Our friendship started rather strangely, to be honest. He recalls that each time he saw McQueen's work, he'd comment to the stylist, 'Fantastic Camilla, what are these?' And she'd say, 'Oh, they're from this new young designer who I think is really brilliant, Alexander McQueen.' He goes on to say, 'Then one Christmas, I got a fax out of the blue from Lee saying, "To Nick, love Lee, happy Christmas." We started working on images for the Venice Biennale, and from then, every possible opportunity we had to work together, we'd try and grab it. Every season, every platform, whatever magazine or exhibition or whatever it would be. Nick brings a complete professionalism and an understanding of the technique in what it does. And if I choose to work with anyone, there has to be that give and take between two people. Kindred spirits confronting the norm.
So I kind of had this sort of slightly odd, delicate relationship with him, and it started, I guess the first thing we did together was the Florence Biennale. We didn't want to go with the mainstream, that's for sure. We didn't want to do things that were necessarily considered beautiful. We found beauty, he and I found beauty in other things. And it felt so much more thrilling. Are the sorts of things that we both liked. And it was always a thrill when Lee would phone me and sort of say, okay, I've got an idea, or I've got a thought, or why don't you, because you knew it was going to push our own boundaries. So you knew we were going to do things that perhaps we certainly hadn't done before. Never ever wanted to repeat himself. Very seldom wanted to photograph his clothes.
At the beginning of McQueen's collaboration with Night, he discovered not only a technically brilliant fashion photographer, but also a kindred spirit, unafraid to venture with him beyond the world of accepted rules. It's not so much violence, it's just confronting the norm, McQueen explained, in relation to Nick's work. Night's photographs of McQueen tend to depict McQueen's overarching insecurities and emotional struggles. Lots of photographs that I did of McQueen were about the pressures that he felt, how he wanted to articulate the feelings that he had, Night told the Wall Street Journal. One picture is of him in a padded cell, in chains hanging from his own flesh. There was another shot we did where his head was exploding. At the time, I just felt it was more imagery. You look back at it with the sad benefit of hindsight, and you can see that perhaps those cries were more heartfelt than we imagined. McQueen goes on to explain in the White interview, he, Nick, just confronts things with the same imagination as I do. You explore a different part of your psyche that people shouldn't really go to, but you do. And what you see in Nick's images and my images is just confronting that shit. I think I bring to him my crazy brain and my ideas that sometimes people don't think can come off, McQueen admits. That's the challenge. If you don't have a challenge in your work, then what's the point carrying on and doing it? I think I bring Nick a challenge, breaking the rules and challenging the status quo. Night often states that whilst he and McQueen did not intentionally set out to challenge standards of beauty, they were frustrated at the conservatism that was rife in fashion photography.
Would you agree that there is a kind of violence in Nick's work and also in your shows?
It's not so much violence, it's just confronting the norm. I don't think there's violence. There's a hint of sadisticness. But don't we all have that?
Fashion is supposed to be an industry that's forward-thinking and is about breaking the rules, but it can be awfully conservative at times. Most of the images we see of women are really misogynistic, Night told the Huffington Post. Women are cast into a very tight role. He saw women in a much bigger and much more exciting way. And I think that the images we created helped push the boundaries of what is included in society's vision of what's beautiful. And it was always pushing the boundaries of what was technically possible and of what people would accept as beautiful. The power of an image. McQueen focused on psychology over clothes. His designs are always a work of art, never displaying pretty faces or pretty clothes simply on a superficial level. Psychological themes cropped up time and again, constantly reflected in Night's photography.
I think I bring to him my crazy ideas and my crazy brain that sometimes people don't think can come off the ideas, and that's what I like doing. I like having an idea like the Ring of Fire and the last McQueen show. It's such a simple idea, but the techniques of it is very hard to do, and but that's the challenge. If you don't have a challenge in your work, then what's the point in carrying on doing it? Nick just confronts things with the same imagination as I do. You explore a different part of your psyche that people shouldn't really go to, but you do. And what you see in Nick's images and my images is just confronting that shit. We think as one, because usually what I was thinking, he was also thinking, no matter which directions it come out. I bring him my psychotic brain.
McQueen calls his shows my own living nightmares. Night supported McQueen's vision. There's a lot of bigotry, and there's a non-comprehension of the power of the image and what one can do with it. Those are the sort of issues both Lee and I had to deal with growing up in the fashion industry. So although we didn't set out to change the rules, both Lee and I saw beauty elsewhere. When you see a woman wearing McQueen, there's a certain hardness to her clothes that make her look powerful, McQueen says in an interview with The Guardian. It kind of fends people off. You have to have a lot of balls to talk to a woman wearing my clothes. It's this sense of impenetrability, he says, that gives his girls their sex appeal. When a woman gets dressed up to go out at night, she wants to give 50% away and hold the rest back. If you're an open book, there's no allure. When we work together, we think as one, McQueen said. Because usually what I was thinking, he was thinking. No matter which direction, we both had the same idea. But we also admit to each other that sometimes things don't work out. Visionaire 20 and a collaboration with Bjork. Night's futuristic rendering of Devon Aoki in McQueen for the cover of Visionaire 20 in 1997 is still amongst the most iconic images produced as a result of the pair's collaborations. Shot in cold blue light and wearing a silk dress with embroidering, the young Aoki appears as a wild cyborg. She's a one-eyed geisha whose forehead has been sliced open and is held together with a safety pin. In a surreal twist, the gash does not bleed blood, but springs forth life, signified by a twig of cherry blossoms. Homogenic. In February 1997, while on the search for visual artwork for her album cover, Bjork was reading an issue of Visionaire when she was captivated by the image of Devon Aoki. Out magazine wrote, something about the coldness and the hardness contrasted with the flowers erupting from this digitally mastered image resonated with Bjork. She subsequently approached Night and McQueen about art editing an album sleeve that would represent not just her, but the ideas of the album.
She explained what the album was feeling like. She said it was kind of a blue period in her life, and she said it was kind of downbeat, and she had taken all these references from all around the world, all these types of different singing, types of different pitches in her voice.
The collaborative team of McQueen, Night, and stylist Katie England went on to design and create all the artwork for Homogenic, an album so successful it planted Bjork firmly within the international realm of music fame.
Homogenic was very much about a person that's put into an impossible situation under a lot of pressure.
McQueen's Autumn-Winter 1997 collection, appropriately titled It's a Jungle Out There, focused on the food chain and natural selection. He collaborated with Night on the campaign, who later did a modern reprisal using original designs. An awful lot of fashion and business is very dull, Night explained to the Huffington Post. People are very conservative in lots of ways, sexually or politically, and Lee wasn't. Controversial extremes. For McQueen, it was all about stirring emotions. The whole show feeling was about the Thompson's gazelle. It's a poor little critter. The markings are lovely. It's got these dark eyes, the white and black with the tan markings on the side. But it is the food chain of Africa. McQueen quoted in Caroline Evans' Fashion at the Edge, spectacle, modernity, and deathliness. As soon as it's born, it's dead. I mean, you're lucky if it lasts a few months, and that's how I see human life. In the same way, we can all be discarded. In the aftermath of It's a Jungle Out There, McQueen's brilliance as a designer and flair for controversy was undisputed and arguably unrivaled. I don't want to do a cocktail party. I'd rather people left my shows and vomited, he told Time Out magazine. With characteristic bluntness, later in 1997, I prefer extreme reactions. I want heart attacks. I want ambulances. Fashionable, 1998. In 1998, Night and McQueen produced a never-before-seen editorial for McQueen's guest-edited issue of Dazed and Confused magazine for Fashionable. Unprecedented within the realm of fashion, the project features a number of models with disabilities in order to challenge beauty ideals. Lee would find beauty in places where other people wouldn't look. Night, a strong advocate of inclusive fashion, later told the Huffington Post. In Night's striking compositions, dancer David Toole's pose is one of pure strength and agility, while athlete Amy Mullen's alabaster skin merges with fiberglass prosthesis in a display of pure ardour, accomplishment and allure. Night and McQueen paint a different world. In it, human value and aesthetic beauty do not conform to the myth of a perfect ideal. 24 years on from the time Dazed and Confused joined with Alexander McQueen and Nick Knight for Fashionable, it is only in recent years that the fashion world has shifted towards inclusivity in the use of disabled models. This further reflects how revolutionary the collaboration between the designer and photographer was. Blade of Light, 2004. Blade of Light, the incredible editorial created by Nick Knight, Alexander McQueen, and Michael Clark for Numero magazine, Spring-Summer 2004. Undoubtedly, the collaborative work between Night and McQueen changed the fashion industry forever, using digital installation and streaming in traditional runway shows, and videography that pushed the limits, and phenomenal fashion campaigns. The infamous Blade of Light was an iconic campaign which made great use of cinematic effect. Knight gave his photo shoots with McQueen an over-the-top and exaggerated abstract feel. His use of dramatic lighting and the slight distortion in his work lifted it above the traditional editorial spreads. Knight filmed the entire working process behind the picture, featuring the Alexander McQueen Depression-era marathon dance-inspired Spring-Summer 04 Deliverance collection, and choreographed by Michael Clark. Nick Knight's Blade of Light image has become one of the photographer's most famous works. Knight interprets McQueen's vision of a bus queue. In it, people wear his Spring-Summer 2004 Deliverance collection. They are being hit by a shooting comet. Collaboration with Puma. In 2005, Puma announced their first collaboration with Alexander McQueen. The campaign imagery for the collection, which went on sale in spring 2006, was shot by Nick Knight and inspired by Lee McQueen's passion for nature. The duo designed the Man-Cat logo, fusing together a visually compelling line with intricate craftsmanship that juxtaposes the contemporary with the sophisticated. The work between Puma and McQueen, assisted by Knight, was instrumental.
It's a scary animal. I mean, a skinless man-cat with the abdominals and pecs and quads and biceps of a man, but in the form of a cat.
It laid the groundwork for fashion's acceptance of the bulky or conceptual sneaker, while pushing the irony of exaggerated proportions and palettes as far more than a faux pas. It was also one of the original collaborations between fashion and sportswear. Nick Knight and Alexander McQueen, Snakes, shot in 2009 for McQueen's final Spring-Summer 2010 Plato's Atlantis collection, was one of the last collaborations between Night and McQueen before the designer tragically took his own life. The image placed model Raquel Zimmerman on a bed of sand, her body merging with an undulating mass of serpents. Night reimagined McQueen's Atlantis and presented his audience with a sensuous, predatory creature in a fantastical land. McQueen best summed up this spellbinding photograph. I think a woman's sexuality in any shape or form is a powerful thing. The use of digital manipulation allowed Night to play with surrealist imagery in fashion. The boundaries of the human body begin to blur, and the highly complex digital print on her apparel becomes a second skin. Night reflects in Show Studio that Zimmerman's body, the garment, and the wider natural world synthesize into one hypnotic fantasy. Plato's Atlantis Collection 2010. On October 6, 2009, McQueen unknowingly staged his final fashion show, in a collaboration with Night, in what was to serve as the forebear of fashion's streaming revolution. The Plato Atlantis show featured huge, menacing robots roaming up and down the side of the runway, following the models, filming their every movement, then swiveling sinisterly around and filming the front row. Alexander McQueen had basically turned the show into a spectacle that was broadcast across the internet, Night tells British Vogue. Fashion entertainment. In his interview with Vogue, Night described the Spring-Summer 2010 Plato's Atlantis collection. McQueen turned that fashion into entertainment, and that's where the difference is, the photographer reflected. That's why there's 3.5 million hits on YouTube. Making fashion into entertainment across the internet is the key to it. Lady Gaga launched her Bad Romance single, Queen's tragic end. He never seemed like the sort of person who was going to take his own life, Night said in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. He always seemed so sure of himself and so tough in a confrontational way. You felt he was going to take on anybody, the fashion world, the art world, anybody. He wasn't frightened of anything. On the 11th of February 2010, McQueen, pushed to the edge by the death of long-term mentor Isabella Blow, followed by his dearly beloved mother, devastatingly fell victim to the demons within his own head, choosing to end his life. The fashion world at large shed a collective tear at the loss of a brilliant designer and a beautiful, down-to-earth and genuine soul.
Alexander McQueen has always attracted the top names in fashion to model for him, among them Kate Moss and Jodie Kidd. His talent earned him the title of British Designer of the Year on 4 occasions. He was also awarded the CBE.
His vision was astounding, bizarre at times, sometimes deeply unsettling, but he kind of knew no boundaries. Whatever it took, he would do in order to create the vision that he saw.
Alexander McQueen's vision inspired millions, and few were as personally moved as his long-term collaborator, Nick Knight, who has since continually honoured him over the years through images, films celebrating his life, and exhibitions dedicated to their work together.
The one amazing thing about working with him was his speed of comprehension. So he would be able to see the idea so much faster than anybody around him, myself included. And he would get quite frustrated that other people would have to catch up. So meetings with Lee, and often we at that time it was at Hoxton Square, but later it was sort of elsewhere in East End. But meetings with Lee were always fairly kind of, Lee would deliver the idea or the thought or the desire of what he wanted to do, and then we'd all start talking about it as if we were trying to catch up. And by that time, Lee was off.
I just want to be a wallflower, McQueen once told The Guardian. Nondescript, just not anything. I don't want to see me. Black. It honours his beloved friend, full of shots from backstage at the iconic 2004 McQueen Black event. The enormous tableau showcases a number of breathtaking looks from the runway event. It's tricky working by myself on an image that I know Lee and I would have worked on together. Knight wrote on his website, Show Studio. I'm very aware what he would like and what he wouldn't, so in some ways I've been very cautious. But we've created what I hope will be considered a very beautiful and incredible image. McQueen, nearing completion of the project and full of anticipation, insisted they shoot behind-the-scenes footage at Earl's Court, the event venue. The unseen footage comprises a short film by Nick Knight, released posthumously, Black. Savage Beauty exhibition at the Met Museum. In 2011, the Savage Beauty exhibition detailing McQueen's career was on display at the Met in New York, where Nick said it drew an eclectic crowd. There were people waiting in the queues around the block to try and get in, and they weren't just fashion students, the photographer reflected. There were a lot of ladies and men in their 50s, and plumbers. Everybody wanted to see it because it touches something within you. It moved to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London until August 2nd. Demand was so high that the museum stayed open throughout the night for the final 2 weekends of the show. It became the most popular show ever staged at the museum, selling over 480,000 tickets during its 21-week run. Show Studio exhibition, Night and McQueen. Show Studio presented an exhibition of Nick Knight's fine art prints, curated by Carrie Scott to celebrate Knight's dynamic collaborations with Alexander McQueen and to coincide with the opening of Savage Beauty at the V&A Museum. The exhibition showcased Knight's arresting reimaginings of McQueen's collections. The prints are monumental in scale. Here, Knight's visual tapestries for McQueen are on display together for the first time at the Show Studio Gallery in Knightsbridge. Illuminations. During an interview with Knight for Show Studio in 2009, McQueen reveals that he saw illuminations of his dreams and his nightmares in them. Their work is similarly daring in their worldview. Their perspective on fashion and ability to fly beyond the coupe is legendary. Nick Knight's collaboration with Alexander McQueen, running from 1996, continues past the designer's death in 2010. Knight still honours his friend through touching tributes. Knight and McQueen are both trailblazers in their respective fields. In their hands, fashion, flesh and form are as malleable as each roll of fabric, length of film, or digital file. The unique flaws of life are a thing of beauty, and debris unseen is a work of high art. The harmonious working relationship between the pair and resulting projects are sure to stand the test of time.